now tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth, Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Good morning, folks. I feel like, give me 1 second here. This is a real close up here this morning. I am sitting down, and whenever I sit down, I always have to adjust my camera ever so slightly. And that's why you see things like the floor, for example. Yes, I think I get a better camera angle definitely when I am standing, but I'm working on some equipment that hopefully will resolve some of the positioning issues that I do have. But good morning to everyone. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late this morning. Can I tell you it was a rough night? I don't know what it is. I need to figure out. There's definitely a connection between why every single Friday morning going into the Friday, my daughter seems to sleep really horribly, and I think I may know what it is. Thursdays are the day that the cleaner comes, and I think what's happening is maybe some of the chemicals and stuff that she is using are simply not agreeing with my daughter, and so maybe at night the fumes and whatever she's just not responding well to. So I think I need to reevaluate some of the cleaning supplies that we're using. You know, these chemicals are killing us all. We're thinking that we're disinfecting everything, and trust me, we are disinfecting ourselves to the point where, sorry, it's probably not really all that great for us. And so I need to really just take a minute, I think, and examine what cleaning supplies we have and what is being used. Because it was the same thing last week. And I noticed that last week, and I kind of, because last week I was actually irritated by some of the cleaning supplies. I'd spoken to a cleaning lady about cutting back, like on the bleach and stuff like that. But I really am now beginning to think that there's a real correlation, because she woke up like literally a million times last night and we just couldn't figure out what was wrong. She just wasn't sleeping well. And so I think we need to contaminate our environment in terms of like all the chemicals we're trying to use to kill everything that we think is killing us. So, of course, when she doesn't sleep well, nobody sleeps well. And that is the bottom line, right? So yeah, it was kind of a rough night again last night. So I'm gonna be looking into that. So literally, I feel like I got no sleep last night. Like it was so interrupted. Like every hour on the hour, I was getting up and looking at that clock because she was waking up and just crying, and we just couldn't figure out what was wrong. So good morning to you guys. Good morning, Diana. Good morning, Irvin. Hey, Vicky, what's up? Vicky's in the house today. Gina, good morning. Maureen and Liz are also here. Vicky, big up to the Georgetown crew. So thank you guys so much for joining. Someone sent me a link this morning talking about why the summer months did not kill the coronavirus. And there were so many, and this is again, White House officials. It says, what were White House officials missing? And so they had a theory. Remember, Trump said that, oh yeah, summer's coming and the virus is going to be killed by the summer months. And of course, no one knew that. There were people circulating a lot of information thinking that that might have been the case. But the experts were saying, hold on, we don't think that the virus is going to be impacted one way or the other significantly by the heat. The level of heat that it would take to even try to kill a virus, no one is really living in that type of condition. In addition to that, of course, this is a new virus. So there are a lot of things that we are simply not prepared for, and we simply do not know the particulars about this virus. So we are still in learning mode, and as we go along, we're learning new things. I saw something this week, for example, where it talked about one of the new symptoms is people get this rash. And so it's important to know what the symptoms are, because a lot of persons continue to think that they're asymptomatic. And, when they go to the doctor and the doctor's saying, oh, do you have a cold? Do you have that? Like they're thinking the traditional respiratory issues and whatever, but this virus is acting so differently that the symptoms that they should be looking for, they are not necessarily looking for. And so I think that that is the tricky part of this particular virus. So Evan, thank you so much for tuning in. Good morning, Ingrid. Hi, Larry. Larry is all the way from New York. Vicky says you look pretty though. Thank you, Vicky. I had to because I feel so tired this morning. I was like, you know what? Let me just do lipstick and mascara, because I find that when you're tired and your eyes look really droopy and tired, that yeah, the little bit of mascara definitely helps. So I did want to bring in the Instagram feed. I'm so over the Instagram live, because those kids on Instagram just don't know how to behave. But then I feel like we kind of make everybody suffer for the few that do not know how to behave. So maybe we'll bring them in again this morning. We'll see. So I'm just going to have a look here at how to do that. So yeah. So how are you guys? It is Friday. We're expecting a press conference today at 3:00. We should have one. We didn't have one last week, so it's been a couple weeks now that we've not had a press conference, and I guess they don't have a whole lot to say is probably the point. So we will certainly find out what's been going on. The numbers continue to trend extremely well. So far, I think we had another um, negative result yesterday out of like maybe 200 cases. Let me just double check the numbers and I'll tell you. So yeah, so that's been really good news. Um, I'm going to talk about the situation later on today about the boat. We're supposed to be doing a fundraiser today for Benji Bodden, and we received quite a bit of information that was concerning. And so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what's going on here, because I've gotten some additional information. And so I want us to kind of work our minds through what is actually going on in relation to that. So again, thank you for joining us. Big good morning to the Instagram folks who are now tuning in to the show as well. We continue to try to be exclusive with Instagram, although we see a level of maturity on that platform that makes us question sometimes why we bother. So Vicky says, I love the lipstick color. Thank you, Vicky. It's a little combination of two different colors. And Paul says, does anyone think that our one deaths from COVID-19 could be attributed to the actual cruise ship and not the Cayman Islands? On the world's list of death, there is a cruise ship category. I get what you're saying, Paul, and I agree with you. However, because he died in our shores, I guess we have to count him as our one case. So, but I do understand precisely what it is that you're getting at, and we can talk about that here in a second. So let's look at the whole heat situation with COVID-19. So this article says, why didn't summer kill the coronavirus? Expert explains what White House officials are missing. Now, let me say this. The White House officials are actually missing a lot when it comes to COVID-19. It's unfortunate, but the president seems to be inclined to believe a lot of things that are not factual in nature. And so he grabs on to quite a few unproven theories. Let's just put it that way. So whether it's that heat kills the coronavirus, or, injecting yourself with disinfectant will somehow cure the virus and not kill you. All of these things, I think, have been very, very dangerous. And there's been a lot of things that he has said that I reckon people may believe that are simply not true when it comes to the coronavirus. So we've been trying to fact check things here on this program and just trying to keep people informed, because I did see even in the Cayman Islands, a lot of people were circulating, these articles about why the coronavirus is not going to hit us because we live in heat and so we should be fine and blah, blah, blah. And I think the truth of the matter is we have not been hit particularly hard by the coronavirus because we went into lockdown mode before it had a significant grip in our community. Having said that, we have over 200 confirmed cases. We know for a fact that the number of confirmed cases doesn't represent all of the cases that we have. So given the percentage of our population that we have tested, and we are touting the fact that we have tested a lot of our population, per capita, I think it's over 15% or something. So we're getting a better idea. We were talking about that positive rate yesterday. We're certainly getting a better idea of how we're doing, but I don't think that we need to believe, like a lot of people are like, oh, well, I think Caymanians have some sort of immunity towards coronavirus and nobody else in the world does. And I don't believe that for 1 second. I don't believe that we are that special. I think that we have just been very, very fortunate that because of our population size and because we were able to isolate ourselves so quickly, and we put mandatory quarantining in place, which is one of the things that, like in the US, for example, they haven't done that. They've closed their borders to certain countries. I mean, imagine if they hadn't closed their borders to countries like, India or some of the European countries. So yeah, they closed their borders to a large extent. However, within the US, the virus already had a relatively strong grip. And then it was able to spread continentally within the US. And we see that that spread has been enormous. It has been significant. So, in our case, being an island meant that we were able to shut down every port of entry. No one coming in on cruise ships, no one coming in on our airlines, no private jets, no nothing. And we just boom, shut it down, put in place mandatory quarantining so that everyone had to go to a facility and they had to stay in that facility for the 14-day period. And so at the end of the day, that really made a significant difference in our ability to be able to get this virus under control. So, I think that is that's one of the primary factors why we have done so well so far. So, it's policy driven, and that's why testing was such a critical and important component of basically just trying to get this right, because we were able to really see precisely where our numbers were at and how we were doing in terms of the coronavirus. And we continue to test and we continue to see fewer and fewer positive cases every single day. And so that again is a bit of good news for us. So why doesn't heat really make a difference in terms of the coronavirus? Let's just have a look at this and see what the experts are actually saying in relation to this. Sorry, so that we can get an idea. So we're going to block this rude person who has decided to join our stream this morning, and we will gladly block anyone on Instagram who wakes up with absolutely no manners. It's as simple as that. It's like these kids think it's so cool to be disrespectful. I don't know who raised some of the animals that we're calling children in this day and age, but can I tell you, they are legit. No one raised them with any degree of respect for themselves or for anyone else. And so they think that they can just get up and say and do anything that they want. And if they've not had a reality check yet about their survival rate in this world, they certainly will eventually. So I just had to block someone there. So, right, I'm seeing some of your comments coming in. Hi, Miss Joy, just give me 1 second here. So this article says that the coronavirus pandemic hit the US. Now they know for a fact that the virus, in fact, was already in the US long before they thought that it was. So whilst they were saying, February, I think it dates back to January when the virus had already reached the US, and they've been able to prove that beyond any sort of reasonable doubt. But even in February, they still had an opportunity, probably February and early March, to really put policies in place that would have stemmed the spread of the virus had they acted early on. And unfortunately, they had leadership who were telling the people in March that by April, they would be out and about for Easter, and everybody would be gathering in large crowds, and everybody would be enjoying the Easter holidays together. And so I think that gave Americans, by and large, a false sense of, I guess, security. And they proceeded with acting like everything was normal when it really, really wasn't normal. So good morning to some of the folks who are joining us on IG. We have Blissful Jewelry, looks like, down Tashila. Some of the Instagram names are hard to read, I'm sorry. Gifted Hands 90 has joined us. Is that Bad Zaidi? I couldn't tell you. Medi. So shout out to any of those that I'm actually pronouncing correctly on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We've got Wanda that has joined us. Roger is joined in as well. Jazzy from the KY and EC Neeks, it looks like, and Jam Hyde. So yes, thank you guys all so much for joining the conversation. And of course, on Facebook, we've got tons of people joining in as well. So there was this theory early on that the coronavirus might somehow be impacted by heat. And of course, I think a lot of these things were just wishful thinking on the part of people, not knowing much about the virus. But there are different things that can definitely impact the way a virus acts, including the weather and temperatures and stuff like that. But there's no real indication that heat, the general heat that we have outside, would have been one of those. However, um, this is April the 24th. The White House acting Undersecretary for Science and Technology at the Department of Homeland Security, his name is William Bryan. He actually touted this emerging evidence, as they called it, that reported that the SARS-CoV-2 would die more quickly in the presence of sunlight and humidity. And I think most of us saw some of these articles. So, the scientists said that they were dubious that this would have had any sort of a major effect. So they pointed to countries, and I mean, this seems almost logical when you think about it, but they pointed to countries that already have warm weather and that were experiencing outbreaks. So they said, hold on, if you live in the Middle East, for example, and the average temperature all the time is like 100 degrees outside, or the feel like temperature is 120, how much, and these countries are clearly having outbreaks, how much of an impact would summer months actually have on this virus? It's not like we are sitting in a petri dish where the temperature is going to get to 200 degrees and that's going to kill the virus. So we're talking about normal summers, So they were not convinced that the weather, in particular heat, would have a significant impact on the actual virus itself. So here we are now in the thick of summer. We know summer's here in the Caribbean because you go outside and you're sweating balls of just water because it is so incredibly hot out there. And so the question then became obviously very, very perfectly clear that the heat or the weather has very, very little real implications on the coronavirus. So mid-July, today is July 17th, there are now over 3.4 million cases in the US, and they're having record-breaking daily cases. And, even in some of the warmest some of the warmest states, scientists are realizing that their predictions are right, that heat has nothing to do with the situation. A light, like literally a shining light, on what officials may have missed. Sunlight, listen, the hardest hit state right now is Florida. Florida is the sunshine state, folks. Nobody gets more sun than Florida. They may get more heat because I think Arizona is a very dry and hot place as well. And the temperatures do rise to be, quite significant in places like Arizona. Florida might get a little bit of the ocean breeze here and there. But the point really is that Florida, the epicenter of this outbreak right now, Miami-Dade specifically, which is the outbreak of this, gets extremely hot in the summer. And it is now clear that heat has no impact on this. So in terms of the scientific confirmation or validation of this, Rachel Baker, who has a postdoctorate fellow at Princeton Environmental Institute, was one of 3 articles that was published on May the 15th in the Journal of Science on how the SARS-CoV-2, which we now are calling, so that's the virus. So remember, I've always said that we interchangeably use like COVID-19 and coronavirus, but there actually is a difference. So the coronavirus and the SARS-CoV-2 is the name of the virus that causes COVID-19. So COVID-19, the term COVID-19 is technically the disease. So once you've got the coronavirus, the COVID-19 is the disease that you get as a result of being exposed to the SARS-CoV-2 or coronavirus. But most people just use them interchangeably. Even like when we're writing articles or reading articles, most people don't keep the scientific and technical separation of the two. But I always want to just clarify that we here on Kim on Mile Road do understand the difference. And so when you're reading scientific journals, such as the Journal of Science, It's important because they will be very, very specific about their usage of the term. So, in this article, it's saying the scientific journal that Rochelle Baker and her colleagues had determined back in May that they actually concluded in their scientific research at the time that summer was unlikely to have a major effect on the spread of COVID 19. And now that is obviously being proven 100% correct. So, what they said was the virus might be weakened slightly by sunlight and warmth, but it was not going to have any sort of significant impact. So here's what they said. Their research contained a pivotal missing piece that a virus with zero immunity is more powerful than both. So one of the things to understand about COVID-19, why it has been able to take a foothold and spread around the world, in which it has, is because it is a novel virus. So we don't have anybody previous to December who have been exposed to this virus before. So that lack of immunity, that lack of exposure means that the entire human race and even the other animals, sorry, because we see cats and dogs, getting the coronavirus as well, that basically no one had any level of immunity. So that lack of immunity to the virus meant that that factor was far more powerful than any potential impact that something like heat or warmth or sunlight could have on the virus. So we go on to have Baker, who spoke to one of the publications now on her research paper, say that when you have a new virus and the population lacks any immunity to that virus, it's just going to spread really well. And the climate is not going to matter much. We made that prediction in May, and we're now seeing all of the cases come up in Florida and Texas, which are very hot places. And they have lots of UV light and all these kinds of climate variables that people were saying might slow down the virus. But that ended up not being the case. It was sort of sad, but interesting to see these predictions come true. So again, heat has nothing to do with the coronavirus, ultraviolet light. And in fact, there is some sort of light that can kill viruses, but it's not even ultraviolet. It's not UV lights, from what I understand. So again, Baker and her colleagues at Princeton, their study has shown how climate variables have an impact on viruses that are already in circulation in the population, such as influenza. So that is why, during the influenza has peak time during the winter months, but influenza thrives during the winter months, but it is already in the general population. Like every year, people are getting influenza A and different strains of the influenza virus. So that is already, in the population. We've got some community immunity for influenza. To be clear, SARS-CoV-2 is not the flu, whereas influenza is a flu virus, right? But so influenza, not only do we have some degree of herd immunity within communities, but we also have vaccines that are available. The flu vaccine may not give you 100% protection against the annual strain of the influenza, but even if it gives you 60% protection, that is more immunity than not having any at all. And with the coronavirus, no one had any immunity at all. And that really is the point. And now the research is really leaning towards the fact that even people who've had it and they're now doing the antibody testing and they're keeping an eye on those, but those people have immunity that may not last very long. Like it may just be a couple months. And so as they continue to study the coronavirus, more and more of this information will become clear. And so it's important to, you guys may not be keen to read scientific journals. Very few people are. They find them dry as I want to say dry as molasses, but I don't know if that's the driest thing, but you know what I mean? They're just really dry and boring. And so who's going to pick up the Journal of Science and read it? But even if you yourself do not want to read these things, that's why we try to give you bits and pieces of information here on this show, so at least that you can keep informed. So the group at Princeton, they were not the only ones to study how the virus might actually be impacted by seasonal changes, the heat and humidity and so on. There was also another group of experts from the University of Maryland's Institute of Human Virology. So virology is the study of viruses. And I've said this to you guys before, there are people who are experts in this area. And they study viruses and they study epidemics and pandemics and outbreaks and stuff like that. And in fact, there's one guy who is considered the father of, virology and epidemics. And he was very critical in getting, not smallpox. It'll come to me. One of the diseases that we've eradicated. Was it smallpox? Anyway, I know I'd mentioned him on the show before. I just can't recall his name, but he was very, very instrumental in the eradication of polio. And he's like now in his, I think his 70s or 80s, like he's quite old, but he's been, studying viruses for many, many years. And he predicted like 10, 15 years ago, or maybe even more, but he predicted a little while ago, the fact that we would be having an outbreak of this kind. So he was like, it's going to be a massive outbreak. Economies around the world are going to collapse. It's going to spread quickly. And he was explaining in one of his TED interviews why he thought even then, why the world in which we live is now conducive to quickly spreading viruses, everything from travel, easy access to jumping in a plane and hopping halfway around the world. All of these things do make a significant difference in how viruses spread and how they can take a foothold within countries around the world. And so he predicted it, he warned about it, he advised countries to start preparing, have a plan. And of course, no one was really paying attention to him because as human beings, I think that we just tend to be extremely reactive as opposed to proactive. So we, don't want to think that the worst will ever happen until it is at our doorsteps. And in fact, someone sent me something yesterday, and I'm trying to remember if I saw it on Facebook, or did they send it to me on my phone? I'm just gonna have a quick look. But it said something like, what is her name? Betty DeVos, the lady who in the US is in charge of education. She's like their education minister, so to speak. Making a comment about, because everyone's now concerned that President Trump is forcing the schools to open, and he has said that the schools will not get any federal funding if they do not reopen. And so she has said something like, well, we can't plan for something that hasn't happened yet. And I haven't fact checked this, so I want to almost say this is fake news. Like, I don't really want to believe that she could possibly be that stupid, because that is such an incredibly ignorant comment to make, that you can't plan for something that hasn't happened yet. It's like, what? Like, who says that? So hopefully, that isn't something that she actually said. But if she did, and we're going to try to flesh it out later to see if that quote can actually be attributed to her, because the irony of it is, unfortunately, there are so many stupid things that people in the Trump administration have said that when you think you've seen it all and you've heard it all, you actually haven't. And so it becomes like, it floors you to think that people are that stupid, but then it turns out that they were right. Like, they did say it. And you're like, what? So I'll try to confirm if that quote is actually from her. So yeah, they said some things that made you just kind of scratch your head. But the University of Maryland's experts also did a study in mid-June from the Journal of Medicine suggesting that the SARS-CoV-2 virus may be infected by heat and sunlight, and thus more likely to spread in colder, drier climates. But in an interview, they're now saying, this is Dr. Mohammed Sajadi, an infectious disease researcher at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, um, says that the conclusions remain the same. So they said may be impacted by seasons. So he said, listen, there's really no immunity towards the virus. So whenever we have a new virus or pandemic, don't quite act in a manner that you can predict. So they don't act in a manner that you can predict. And this uncharted territory is something he remembers from viruses in the past, including the H1N1 pandemic in 2009, which peaked in the summer months, which is considered an unusual development for influenza. So that particular virus is a influenza virus. And then he said that was before peaking multiple times bigger in the fall and winter. And he says that kind of what remains to be seen with this virus is what will it do in the cooler months that are ahead for fall and winter. So stay tuned, folks. We don't know yet. There's a lot that remains to be seen with this virus. And so the scientists are doing their research and they're paying attention. And they are certainly trying to accumulate as much information as they possibly can, because that's how we learn from like one virus to the next. We don't have all of the answers. We don't know a lot of the stuff, but the only way that we can make any educated and informed decisions about how this virus will operate moving forward is to simply give it a chance to do its thing. And we observe and we do the research and we make, commentaries and so on. So let's go to some of the Facebook comments. Ms. Joy says, good morning. Have a blessed, safe and blessed weekend, everyone. Lisa, thank you so much for tuning in. Lisa says that Cayman Brac is heating up as the time passes. Yeah, it does seem like there are people who don't believe in global warming, but it seems like the months are getting hotter and hotter every single year, the summer months. And speaking of Cayman Brac, there are dead fish in the pond. We saw that here in South Sound about a week ago as well. I think is the water temperature unusually hot? We haven't received an explanation from DOE as yet about what's going on with the fish and why they are dying, but clearly the fish are dying. And so we posted a video a couple days ago in Cayman Brac. There's that pond. You can actually, it's a little bit hidden from the airport, but when you come in, it's like literally right next to the airport. And then on the other side of the pond is Brac Reef. And so that pond has had a lot of dead fish this year. And so people are wondering, what is going on? Some people feel like this is a bad sign in terms of like hurricane season and so on. Knock on wood, we've not had any hurricane activity reaching us so far, and it is July, but of course we know the peak months for hurricanes are August moving into September, actually. So we're nowhere near the peak of that situation. But yeah, it is kind of interesting that the fish are dying. It could just be that it's so incredibly hot out there. I don't know. I'm not a fish expert, or I don't know what's going on with the water temperatures. But everyone is kind of like, what is going on? And the stench of dead fish apparently is not a very good smell, as you can imagine. And so there's the fact that it's happening that has people concerned. And then there's also the environmental impact of having dead fish just like rotting on the side of ponds and water and stuff like that. But we did see it here, like I said, about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. Someone sent some footage from dead fish in South Sound. I think there was some in East End as well. And so people are kind of questioning, like, what's going on with all the dead fish? So good morning, Janine. Janine is joining us from Florida. My gosh, Janine, please be careful. They're in Florida with this outbreak. We're hoping that maybe next week we can interview some people overseas. I know someone had mentioned that their sister or someone was in Florida that would have been happy to join us in conversation. We know that Charles Whitaker is actually now in Florida, so maybe Charles will join us on the show to kind of tell us what's going on in Florida. What's it like living in Miami-Dade or in the epicenter of this? Like, how are people dining out? What's the vibe? What's going on there? So Debbie and Cecile, thank you guys so much for joining, and happy Friday to you. Hi, Catherine. Linda says, just keep our borders shut until January, please. And this is a good point. I saw the Compass, and the Compass kind of beat us to it. So congratulations to them. We had been thinking about doing this survey, and we probably will still do it, about whether or not we should reopen our borders. I think as of right now, it seems like the results coming in, reopen our borders in September. The results coming in for the Compass seem to be 50-50. And I'm surprised by that. Like, I thought it would have been more people saying hell to the no, do not open our borders. But people seem to be willing to take the chance, which I find to be so incredibly crazy. Why would we reopen our borders? I, for one, am a big no. Keep the borders shut. It may be past January, to be honest. It depends really on what is happening around the world. So Florida's epicenter of this virus. Let me just understand the logic, right? Cayman Airways flies into Florida every single day that we fly. We may do a Miami route, a New York route, but in all honesty, New York is not in a much better position. I mean, I guess technically they are right now, but they have had their outbreak already of this coronavirus. So why on earth would we open our borders knowing that Cayman Airways has to fly into Florida every single day, and that the airport is going to be buzzing? You cannot stop people from doing things that we might consider to be incredibly stupid. So we reopen our borders. I know that the CDC is advising Americans to not travel, and yet Americans don't care. Disney World is reopening, and they're going to Disney World. So what do they care about coming to the Cayman Islands? They have a very nonchalant attitude about this virus, despite the fact that it is killing like over 1,000 people a day. Until it's at their doorstops, and this is a human nature kind of thing. So this isn't just Americans that are like this, because we see Caymanians suffering from the same mentality. And I think that's why 50% of us think that opening our borders is actually a good idea. So people tend to have, like, if it's not happening to me, if it's not at my doorsteps, why am I going to worry about it? Or it's not real, it's a hoax. We saw the young man last night who died in the States, 30 years old. And he is saying, this virus is fake. It's not real. It's not a big deal. And so he goes to a COVID party to purposely get himself infected. And only on his deathbed does he admit, I was wrong. I was stupid. Why did I do this? It's like, really, dude? Have you not been paying attention one bit to the news? And it is that type of obliviousness that I think people in general have. So, it's the same thing with the president of the United States, walking around refusing to wear a mask because he doesn't believe the virus is real, or he thinks it's no big deal, and he's got some kind of special immunity because he is Donald Trump. And so now we're seeing that in Florida, House Democrats are demanding a stay-at-home order be implemented, mandatory wearing of masks. They're starting to fine people who are going out in public spaces and refusing to wear masks. And there's been a number of very high-profile incidents with people who are refusing to wear masks. There was a fatal instance with someone who got in a fight with one person was carrying a knife and one was carrying a gun or something absolutely crazy, because the other person was refusing to wear a mask. So, I mean, it's so ironic that persons would feel like this is infringing on their personal rights, when the bottom line is we're trying to keep everyone alive, including you, and trying to stop the spread of this virus. And it's just not been working particularly well, because people just don't believe that they need to be concerned. And there was an actual photo that someone sent me. I'm going to see if I can find it, demonstrating how the virus spreads and how the wearing of a mask, whilst it's not 100% of a guarantee, does offer you some degree of protection. And in fact, the degree of protection that you are offered increases when both people when people come in contact with each other, if both persons are wearing a mask. So it is a good idea. And despite that, people still are refusing to do so. So there was a very illustrated, here it is. I'm going to put this up on the screen here in a second. There was a very illustrative picture that demonstrated how effective mask wearing can be. So yeah, so COVID-19 is also racing through Miami's federal prisons because prisons are one of the high risk areas. They're like nursing homes. You're on lockdown. You are, it just is what it is. It's a petri dish for the spread of the virus. You don't have many choices in terms of getting out and about when you are incarcerated. So the University of Miami is also testing coronavirus vaccines, and they're looking for people who are willing to volunteer. And I'm just having a quick look at some of the other headlines. But yeah, Miami is, struggling to address this issue quite a bit. And Florida, all of Florida is, really, they're saying things like Jackson Hospital, they're having some issues. Someone mentioned yesterday, what about the fact that we airlift so many people to Miami and Jackson Memorial, which I think Jackson is actually, they have no capacity right now. So this was sent to me yesterday where someone said, "Good morning, I have a question. Not sure if it's relevant one, but here it goes. Most of our patients are air ambulance to Miami, goes to Jackson Memorial Hospital. And I'm watching the news right now, and it's saying that they are full due to COVID-19. So if patients have to be airlifted, which I hope does not happen, does our hospital have measures put in place to deal with other hospitals?" So the short answer is we checked with the relevant officials here in the Cayman Islands, and they responded and said that they will transfer patients to any hospital where their insurance authorizes that to happen. So that is a bit of good news. And Jackson Memorial is at capacity, if you can believe that. No beds. They can't take anybody else in. And so, all of this does have a trickle-down effect on everyone else. So there is a Reverend, his name is, let me just get his name, C.T. Vivian. He was a federal general for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a champion of nonviolence. He's died at the age of 95. He was very instrumental in the civil rights movement, and so that's kind of interesting. Obviously, he lived a full life at 95, but in light of what is happening now with the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement. So Carol says, keep the borders closed. Carla, good morning. Noel is here for it. Noel says, good morning, Sandy, I'm here. Vicky still with us. Olivia, thank you for joining in, and Rosita. Sophia says, beautiful morning, Miss Sandra. Yes. Hi, Jonathan. What's up? Jonathan is joining us on YouTube. So we're still cross-streaming on YouTube. Right now, we've got 7 people tuned into YouTube, 84 on Facebook, because Facebook is always popping. So that gives us a total of 92 people watching the stream right there. And then we do have a handful of people on IG as well. So let me read some of your additional comments. Jake says, so hot that the fish are dying. Yeah, something's going on in the water, I think specifically, because it's always hot out there, right? And I don't feel like the air temperature is necessarily any hotter than normal, but there's something going on in the water. So good morning, Sue, Morna, happy Friday. And Dean is here this morning as well. So Sue says that Phoenix, Arizona has been 115 this past week. Wow. And it's bad there. Too, as my brother lives there, and he said the numbers are scary. Jonathan says, always aim for accuracy. Yes, Jonathan. Another Sue says, what about recovered cases? I guess we cannot rely on these numbers from Florida either if they're thinking Florida's count and cases is incorrect. So when we look at the numbers, I think what is going on, Sue, is that they're kind of giving you, like when they say, they've had 1,000 people, new cases in one day, those figures are such that that's the bare minimum that they have tested and that they can confirm. Issues here and there, but I think by and large, we should understand and rely on the fact and the basic knowledge that there are way more cases than that. Like you can't test everyone, so that's only a percentage of the population. And as we said on yesterday's show, what is actually happening at the moment is that the sicker people are the ones who are getting tested. So, of course, the vast majority of those are going to be positives because they are symptomatic. And so the people who are asymptomatic, like here, how we're testing, like we're getting a lot of results for asymptomatic people. That's because we are doing widespread testing in the community. So, like retail workers, grocery workers, we're probably one of the few jurisdictions that had the capacity to check all of our grocery chains, A.L. Thompson staff, all these people before they got back into working in the public were subjected to testing. Banking staff, every 4 weeks, frontline workers in these banking institutions are being retested because, again, of how the coronavirus works. So just because you've tested positive a month ago doesn't mean you can't catch the virus after that, right? So the numbers that we have do include some repetition in terms of people who are retested. People are being put in quarantine. They're tested several times just to, again, make sure that there's that accuracy. So I think what is happening in the US is that the net that has been thrown out there isn't sufficiently wide enough to give you real comfort that they're testing the vast majority of people. They are testing the vast majority of sick people. And it is taking 7 to 10 days to even get test results. So that in and of itself is alarming because in those 7 to 10 days, even if you're showing symptoms, but it's taken so long to get tested, you're spreading the virus to other people as well. Larry says, as much as I miss Cayman, it's probably not a good idea to open the borders yet. Keep it safe. Yeah, to me, I can see no logical or economic argument that would make this work. I know everyone wants to think that at the end of the day, we need to fully reopen the economy. That's how we're going to survive. But if you look at the models of what is actually happening the world over in terms of the coronavirus, the places that reopen too quickly and that are hardest hit by the virus are, in fact, the places that reopen to try to save the economy. And it does not help the economy, okay, when you have to re-shut down. It doesn't help the economy when you have the virus spreading like wildfire. So it's unfortunate that people have this misguided belief that reopening the economy at all costs will somehow be beneficial to us because it simply isn't the case. So I would say there's no evidence to prove anywhere in the world that reopening economies and taking that chance has worked. I mean, I challenge anyone, we even look at the Swedish model. There's a few people I think who have published stuff on Sweden that others are like, well, I'm going to rely on this to show that, Sweden isn't doing so bad. It has not helped their economy. And they now have the highest rate of all of their neighbors in that region of people who have died from the coronavirus. So really and truly, the question becomes, what is the point of reopening early, trying to push and force the economy open when all you're actually doing is spreading the infections, the infection rate within your own jurisdiction? It seems very, very illogical to me. And it's a risk that if I were a leader in this country, I don't care what anybody says, I would not be willing to take. Simple. But we will see. Janet, thank you for tuning in. Jonathan says people need to stay away from infected people, but if you don't know who's infected, the best thing to do is just avoid contact. And that is why, you know, shelter in place works. Complete shutdown of businesses. Jonathan, we showed a chart last week or earlier this week where you are more likely to catch the virus. So they are hot spots. Bars are one of the hottest spots in which you catch viruses. And that's why Florida, some weeks ago, when they hit that new number, which they've now surpassed by thousands, but at the time they were afraid that they have again peaked. They've not even peaked yet. It keeps getting worse every single day. But one of the first things that they did was to prevent bars and restaurants from serving liquor, because most people are not going to bar if there's no liquor. Like, what are you going to do? And so, you know, sitting in close quarters next to each other is certainly one of the ways in which you can catch the coronavirus very, very easily. So yeah, there is a graph, we shared it, that went through all of the different activities that you can be engaged in. I'm going to just pull it back up here again so that we can see what's considered low risk, what's considered high risk. And so I'm sorry to the Instagram people that you can't see these graphs and stuff, but, and thank you to Betsy DeVoe. Yeah, was her name I was thinking of earlier. She's their education czar or minister, whatever they want to call her. So in terms of the activity that is extremely high risk, let's have a look at this graph again. So it's got stuff all the way from the top, from low risk, medium high, and high risk, right? And this graph is illustrative of the point and of the reason why certain things don't reopen until you can give almost the all clear. So you can move to level 1 suppression. But bars are the highest, all the way down at the bottom where it says high risk. Number 9 is like the highest. The things that fall into number 9 are going to a bar, attending a religious service with 500 plus worshipers, going to sporting stadium, attending a large music concert, because all of those things have one thing in common: lots of people. And with a bar, it is lots of people and in a confined space. You're not even in open air. Going to an amusement park is number 8 out of 9 on the risk level. So it's actually a scale of 1 to 10. So the 9 is like the highest risk. They don't have any 10s on here, but I guess 10 would be something really stupid like going to a COVID party, where you're trying to purposely catch this because you don't believe that it exists, right? But number 8 is going to a movie theater, going to an amusement park. So again, the fact that Disney reopened and that people would jump on going to Disney World is like crazy. Also at number 8, which is considered high risk, is working out at the gym. I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. They were like, they went to the gym and they're noticing that people are not, like the gym employees are not sanitizing stuff after usage. You can't rely on the users to do it. And so one of the higher risk places is going to the gym. So Jake, are you at the gym this morning? You know, that's high risk. People are touching equipment with sweat and all the other stuff that happens when you go to the gym. So a gym environment is considered extremely high risk. Eating from a buffet, number 8, is also a high risk activity. Most restaurants will now do away with buffets going forward. Main reason, again, you're in that restaurant environment, but you're also touching everybody. You could have thousands of people come through to an active buffet in the States, and everyone is touching the utensils and sharing that area, right? So you could see why a buffet is, again, a hot spot for infections, such in the spread of infections and viruses such as the coronavirus. So hugging or shaking hands when greeting a friend is a number 7. Playing football, playing basketball, so contact sports, are number 7. And that's why, again, when we went to level 2 suppression, contact sports were like the final phase of level 2 suppression, which is going to be coming up here. I think we move into the final phase of that on the 19th, which is this weekend, right? This Sunday. So there's a reason why contact sports are particularly dangerous. Traveling by plane, attending a wedding or funeral is a number 7 as well. Eating in a restaurant on the inside is a number 7. Going to a hair salon or barber shop is a number 7. And so all the salon owners that were moaning and complaining about why won't they let us reopen? We can handle this, blah, blah, blah. It is because the research has shown that these activities, and salons fall into number 7 category, eating in restaurants, are moderate to high risk levels. Okay, and that is why they were not permitted. Again, you're in such close contact with people. And number 6 is visiting an elderly relative or friend in their home, as well as swimming in a public pool, strata pools, folks. Working a week in an office building. So to put this in perspective, sending kids back to school, camp, or daycare is a number 6, and that's considered moderate risk. So right now, in the middle of, as well as shopping, going to the beach, that's all moderate risk. But in the middle of this outbreak in the US, this pandemic, the Trump administration is saying that they want to force people to go back, kids to go back to school. And that is very, very alarming and very, very concerning. And there are a number of experts who are saying, do not do this. You are now going to expose, you think that children have some degree of immunity, but you're now going to expose what really is a vulnerable population, children, to this virus. And we don't know everything about this virus. So trust and believe. We've already seen it given the poor little children COVID toes and this Kawasaki disease, which was something that, they hadn't seen in quite some time. And they were a bit surprised that there was a link between this and the COVID-19 disease. But yeah, they will learn more and more and more about how this impacts people. Why expose children? And children are vulnerable in and of themselves just because they are children and they touch everything. And it's hard for them. Listen, it is hard for us as human beings to not touch our face. Like the second I think about touching my face, all of a sudden my nose itches. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do that. It's like a psychological thing. It's like something in your head. The second something happens, you feel the necessity to like want to touch your face, and so if it's difficult for us as human beings, imagine what it's like for kids. Now, kids have returned somewhat to some, environments. My daughter has gone back to her daycare. They only allow 6 kids in a class, and they are social distancing within the class, which I didn't think was possible with 3-year-olds. But what they have done is they've given each child a mat area, and the children know that they have to stay and play on their mat. And so they're being supervised. So they're in a general room, but less children in that space. The mats are spread out, and everyone has a dedicated mat that's theirs. They're temperature checking when they're dropped off and when they're picked up. They're hand washing before they go into the classroom environment. Parents are not allowed to go into the environment at all. You do curbside pickup and drop off with your kids. And then they're doing a deeper, sanitation every single evening and stuff as well. Fewer instructors and teachers in the environment. No commingling of classrooms. No commingling on the playgrounds. I mean, there's a lot of measures in place, but it is still considered a moderate risk. So yeah, I don't really know why he would be pushing for all schools to open. And already we've heard places like California said, no. They're actually postponing the reopening of schools up to 3 weeks already. Diomaris says, Sandy, it is a plant that cured it. It's called Plant Your Ass at Home. Good one. Sue says, interesting to listen to Mary Trump, Donald Meese last night. She blames him for the mess the US is in and just wondered if you heard her. She really spoke the truth. I haven't, Sue, specifically heard her. I think this is the same niece who's writing a book. So, of course, she's on a junket to sell her book. But, I try to read as much as I can scientific information on what's happening. And I have my personal opinion about Donald Trump. He's not firing on all cylinders. As Kim Onions would say, he's a couple, what would we say, like, the keg is short by a couple, whatever, or the drawer is missing some silverware, all these things that basically mean he's not really all that bright. And he's never been bright. And he has had a jump start in life simply because of who he is. And his father was able to, as an immigrant to the US, take advantage of a number of systems in place, and he knew how to manipulate the tax system. I was listening to a very interesting podcast the other day about how, as an infant, Donald Trump was making a salary. So, as an infant, before he even knew how to speak, his dad was finagling the US tax system and paying him and his siblings interest off of the rental property. So, his father acquired a lot of property in New York. He was a slumlord, was basically what he was. And to avoid some of the taxes that he'd have to pay on earned income, he was actually redirecting that earned income to his children, even as they were babies. And so Donald Trump has had a silver spoon in his mouth actually from day one, because his father was smart enough and understood enough about how to finagle the tax system in the US. Donald Trump was not necessarily born with those kind of smarts, but he happened to have been born into an environment that was privileged. And with privilege, came the money and came the ability to get certain things done. So it is what it is. Those are facts. So you can't argue with that. So Kathy says, morning, very true, Sandy, but even when we experience such a traumatic event, human beings still don't learn. I see that here as well. It's so sad. And Kathy, you have a valid point, because I was even thinking about this the other day. Human beings are just stubborn. Like, we really are stubborn at a different level. Let me give you an example. We all struggle with it. So if the doctor says, listen, you need to quit smoking because now you have cancer, or you need to adjust your diet because you're headed on the road to high blood pressure, diabetes, blah, blah, blah. That is the hardest thing in the world for us as humans, to really work our brain around how we're going to do that. We're just like, what? Because we're such creatures of habit. And that's why when they tell you about how important it is to form healthy lifestyle habits, even as children and as parents, that's where we become responsible for our kids, trying to get them to eat their fruits and vegetables, because they're born wanting the sweet stuff. I mean, their taste buds, you can unlearn these things, but their taste buds automatically galvanize and move towards anything that is sweet and unhealthy. I mean, it takes a child, I forget how many times, something like 8 or 9 times of trying a vegetable to actually acquire the taste buds for it before they will actually want it. It may be more than that, to be honest. I'll have to look that up, but it's a significant amount of times compared to if you give them a piece of candy, anything sweet, oh, I love it. But the broccoli, the cauliflower, the things that are good for us that don't always taste the best, you can suss them up with seasoning and whatever. It takes a child's taste buds a while to get used to those things. So that's why they tell you, even when you are feeding children, the baby peas that are smushed up and whatever, don't give up just because they make up their faces and they're like, this is horrible. What is this crap that you're trying to give me? Because babies will do that. And they tell you, stick with it. Keep giving them the peas. And eventually the taste buds will acquire a taste for it and they will eat it. And it's not that it may not be the first thing on their list of choices. They're not going to be like, whoo, mommy, I want to have broccoli for breakfast. but if you put it on the plate, they will still have a little piece of it. They will still eat it. Um, so Jonathan is giving us some jokes this morning. He says, dry as desert sand, dry as Donald Trump's jokes. So yes, Kathy, I think you have a valid point about how human beings are. We our heads are hard to the max. Jonathan says that's the point of planning for something that hasn't happened yet. It's like planning for the future. Well, listen, that is exactly what planning means, right? And you plan based on projections. And so you may not have all of the information available to you, but when you have some of the information available, you will then be in a better position to plan. But moving through this world blindly will never be of benefit to you. I mean, it is just one of those things that when you learn to plan, you will do so much better in life, you know? And that's why things are called contingency plans. If X happens, I can deploy contingency plan A. We don't know if we're going to get a hurricane every year, but planning dictates that you anticipate a hurricane because we live in the Caribbean basin in the region where the chances of us getting something like a hurricane are very high on the list. So we plan. We didn't plan for Hurricane Ivan, but it happened. So there are things that we may not always factor in to our planning, but planning saves us a lot of headache further down the line. Why do you think the government forces us to have a pension plan that is not mandatory? Because the government has recognized that the vast majority of us suck at financial planning. We are horrible at financial planning. That is why when we reach retirement, we have no money. We spent our money on cars throughout our lives. We spent more money on Amazon than we care to admit. We go on shopping sprees and we spend thousands of dollars. And instead of saying, every month I could take that money and put in an investment plan for myself, we have every excuse in the book why we can't save money. So the government says, listen, we get that people are poor financial planners. We see that in the local community and all over the world. Very few people do a good job at it. So we're going to help you plan. And by helping you plan, what we mean is we will force you to have a pension plan. It is mandatory, right? So Instagram, I've just had to restart the feed. So thank you guys for joining back in. We're just talking about this concept of people not understanding why it's important to plan things in life. It's like health insurance. It's a gamble, and every month you pay health insurance, and you're like, why am I paying health insurance when actually I don't need it? Yeah, you don't need it yet. But the one day you get in an accident, the one day you get sick with a terminal illness or a near terminal illness, then you understand the value of having insurance and this sort of forward thinking plan in place. People plan things, they plan vacations, so countries and governments have to, part of their remit and part of their jobs are to plan for their people. And where they see that we as people fail at planning, they will plan for us. Yes, you must have a retirement fund. Yes, you must have a pension fund, et cetera, et cetera. So let me just see. Jonathan, I agree with your points in planning. Lisa says, I never saw it until last night on CMR. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I think we did do an article, though, about Trump's niece. I personally didn't write that article, but I did see something go up. Sue is talking about South Sound with the dead fish, I think. So Jonathan offers a possible explanation about the water. He says the water is stagnant when it's heated up. The water loses oxygen, and there's a mass extinction that killed off most of the species in the sea because of this. I don't know if it's a mass extinction, but some fish are definitely dying. So Carol says yes. The rest of us suffer. The vast majority of people are always going to suffer for the 20 percenters that don't want to wear masks, that don't want to do the right thing. Sue's grandson is waiting to hear when he can go back to college in Miami. Sue, I would suggest he does his online courses and not plan to return for the next year. I'm just being realistic here. I wouldn't touch Miami with a 6-foot pole. Listen, you know how badly I want to go to Miami and pick up some equipment that I need and some shopping that I need to do and whatever? No, 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 no. Nope, 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 nope. Amazon, whoever else, online companies, they're going to have to ship it to the Cayman Islands. Thank you, Aeropost. I'll be using Aeropost to clear and bring out and consolidate my goods because I am not going there. Kelly wants to know the next planned flight to Jamaica. Nothing announced as yet, Kelly. We can reach out to Cayman Airways and see if they can give us some information. Press conference today at 3 o'clock, so maybe we'll get some information. They're not really planning the Cayman Airways flight to Jamaica, but I do understand in terms of like air bridge flights and stuff, we'll probably get some additional information on that. Krista, thank you. Good morning. Lisa says it's hotter here now. Over here in the BRAC, the bed is hotter, even your clothes. I don't normally sweat, but for the last couple of days, I've been sweating profusely. I mean, I'm not going outside a lot necessarily, so I do think it's hot, but I haven't personally noticed it being hotter than any other July, if you know what I mean. Like July is always hot. August, off the charts hot, right? And that's why the hurricanes start to heat up as we move into August and September. Bonnie, thank you so much for tuning in. Good morning. Another Jonathan has joined us on YouTube. So, oh no, that's the same Jonathan. Sorry. I was thinking there was another Jonathan. Nope, Jonathan Parchment. Gotcha. All right, I was thinking that was another Jonathan. All right, so Genevieve, thank you, darling, for tuning in. Gadiel, Alex. Alex says there's 71,335 new cases in the US yesterday. Now listen, folks, Dr. Fauci, who is their not Minister of Health, but he's kind of like their equivalent to that. He said a few weeks ago, we are going to reach 100,000 new cases a day. That was his prediction, and they are well on their way at over 71,000. Wow. Thank you for that information. Oh my gosh, my apologies. So as of 9:21 last night, the US shattered its single-day record for new cases. It was the 11th time in the past month that the record has been broken, and here's the latest. New single-day record for cases on Thursday, more than 74,000, with some numbers still to be announced, according to a New York Times database. The previous record of 68,241 was announced on Friday. So this is last night as of 9:21 p.m. So let me just see if this has been updated. Yes. So it was updated as of 7:50 a.m. The US now has more than 75,600 cases on Thursday, which is a new record for them. So not far off from the 100,000 that Dr. Fauci was predicting. Folks, that is scary. Going to Miami for school, shopping, Repatriation, not me. Not me. Opening Cayman's borders, listen, the vocal few that care more about the economy than they do the lives of the people, they're in the ears of the politicians. So let me advise you, if you believe that reopening in September, which is pretty much right around the corner, a month and a half away, is a dangerous proposition, contact your MLAs. Let them know that you do not support reopening our borders. alden.mclaughlin@gov.ky is his email address. All the ministers and all the cabinet people, they have the same email addresses. First name dot last name at gov.ky. Email every single one of them and let them know your position on reopening Cayman's borders come September. Because the risk is absolutely too high given the numbers that we're seeing here. 75,600 new cases on Thursday, a single day record. India also ranked third in the world in both new and total cases. It looks like it's going to overtake Brazil. So the question becomes, if we reopen, who are we reopening for? Because there are hot spots all over the world. What is the point of reopening? The US is epicenter right now. India is being hit by it. There are European countries, Brazil. So who are we going to let in? There's no one that we could let in that the risk could be significantly managed to give me any comfort that that is the thing to do. We don't have the facilities to quarantine everyone. Listen, if you're coming in on a work permit right now and you want to return, as long as your employer is willing to foot the bill for you to go into quarantine for 14 days, you can do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Let's keep it that way, folks. Let us keep it that way. You know how many people are in Jamaica right now saying, oh, they want to come in, new people wanting to come in? Jamaica is struggling with this virus, despite what some people think. I've heard people saying, oh no, Jamaica only has 900 cases or 800 cases and whatever, they're doing well. Are you paying attention? Are you listening to the criticism that Dr. what's his name, Tufton, is under at the moment in Jamaica? From the medical community, they're saying we're low on medicines. We are, having some serious concerns. Physicians are overworked. They're stressed to the max. There's like all this stuff. And meanwhile, poor Dr. Tufton is dealing with a personal crises of sorts where he is being accused. I'm going to put this story here. He is being accused of having some sort of extramarital relationship. And now that situation is overshadowing what he should be focusing on. But according to him, there are no issues. There are no shortages of medicine. And people are like, what? Are you living in the same Jamaica that we're living in? So that's some of what's happening all over the world. Check this story out. You think people are managing this and we should reopen our borders? The few Caribbean countries that have done so are regretting it. Barbados now revising their entry program. This was as of yesterday. Their government information services announced that passengers arriving in Barbados with a negative COVID-19 PCR test from countries deemed high risk will now be quarantined at an approved facility for 7 days. So although you have a positive or a negative result, my apologies, they are still going to quarantine you because that ain't working, folks. They are importing new cases every single day. Ay, ay, ay. So they're struggling, and they're now seeing, what's happening in countries that are reopening. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. You can't manage it. So now they're backtracking. Oh gosh, you're going to have to go into mandatory quarantine. They didn't plan this out thoroughly. They've revised the public health protocols for air travel to Barbados. Sorry. And that was all issued yesterday. So now, listen to this. Anyone coming in from high-risk country, aka America, without a validated negative test result will be tested at the Grantley Adams International Airport and must remain there until the results are known. Say what? I don't know how quickly they're getting their test results, but I sure hope this is same-day turnaround, because you can't just stay in an airport for a day or two, right? If the test results are negative, then they have to go into quarantine before being retested. If they're positive, they will go into immediate isolation. They're reminding people that the COVID-19 PCR test has to be done by an accredited or certified facility or laboratory 72 hours before travel, before arrival to Barbados. And they talk about the different standards that they will accept. People have to submit the test electronically as well as bring a hard copy. So again, they're trying to manage the fact that they've reopened their borders and it's not working out too well for them. High-risk countries, United States, Brazil, India, Mexico, Argentina, the Philippines, Russia. Moderate risk countries, Canada, Spain, Germany, Italy, France. Imagine Italy's now moderate risk. Remember what happened to them. Jamaicans consider it moderate risk, Japan and China. Low risk includes Cuba, New Zealand, and Norway, and the CARICOM states, I think because of the arrangement that they have with the other CARICOM countries. So that's where we're at, folks. Again, reopening seems to be a very risky proposition, one that in good conscience I cannot support. I'm just getting used to enjoying my freedom, folks. I finally was able to go on Friday, sit down at a restaurant, had a meeting with a few people. That's great. That's nice. Don't take that away from us because we're rushing to reopen it. In the end, it will not benefit us at all. Nigel, good morning, darling. Thank you for tuning in. Catherine says, still not sure why bars and cinemas need to open. Well, Catherine, people are stressed out, my dear. Seems like they need to drink. And I don't know about cinemas, but, I'm staying home. I'm not going to cinema. That is one place you will not see moi. Nope. And you won't see me in a bar either. You might see me in a restaurant, but you will not see me in a bar and you will not see me at a cinema. Odette, good morning. Please don't forget to go pick up your gift certificate today. Sean says, do not open our borders at this time. We have committed no crime and therefore we should not be further locked down. Louis says, top of the Friday morning to you all. Have a blessed weekend. Stay safe. Wear a mask. If you have to go out and in conjunction with social distancing, we can stay alive. Thank you, Louis. Norma, good morning, my dear. Thank you for joining in. Anne says, Catherine, because people can't stay in the house and die of boredom, and because the government don't want people's mental health to go. Well, I don't know if your ability to go to a bar will mean you'll die of boredom. People need to be more creative, I think, and engaging themselves. Listen, I saw the lockdown. I got what it did to you mentally, to know that you were basically a prisoner of your own home. right? However, with the exception of children, especially younger children, because it's very, very hard to kind of explain to them even what's going on. I think that there was so much that people could have done even within the confines of their own homes. This was an opportunity for you to pick up a book. Most of us have not read a book in years. Read a book, catch up on a new TV series, learn a new skill. There's so many online courses you could do, so many videos that you could get engaged in. It's like we're just used to doing the same things over and over again, or running to a bar, sitting down and having a drink. Because I guess human beings are creatures of habit, and they don't know how to do anything else. So that's interesting. But I think there were options available to people to actually engage in something new and different. Look at how many people took to exercising, Anne, that previously were not exercising, but the lockdown gave them nothing else to do. So they're like, you know what? I'm going to start getting in the routine of going for a walk. I've not seen more people exercising in the streets of Cayman than during the COVID lockdown. And to me, that was a good thing. Oh yes, so Jonathan, Sue is reminding us that her grandson is a chef and he's doing courses. So it's kind of hard to do some of that stuff online. It's more practical, like in the kitchen and so on. Understood. Anne says that she just wants to see her kids for Christmas. And I don't know where the kids are or where you are. Maybe you could tell us. But listen, it may come down to you seeing your kids for Christmas alive and well on a Zoom conversation, or seeing them in person after this epidemic continues to spread and having to bury someone because of this. Like the choices, I know that it's hard to fathom because I do not think, unless you're in the epicenter sometimes, that you're really appreciating how bad this is. We have a friend who a couple months ago actually got COVID when it was in New York. It was really hitting New York badly. He lives in New York. And even people who don't die from this, the recovery period and the suffering that they go through, he has said it is like nothing he's ever experienced before. And months later, he is still suffering tremendously from, you know, the COVID-19 disease. And so it is unfortunate that we have to, I think, live in such conditions. But what else are you going to do when the alternative is to literally take people's lives and put them at risk? Is it worth visiting or seeing your grandchildren or your kids or whatever if you knew that they could get this virus? And the chances are very high if you're in the US or if your kids are in the US. So what would you rather have happen? See your kids and expose them to the virus and hope they survive? Or see them on a Zoom conversation and just be thankful that they can isolate and remain very much alive? Tanisha, thank you for tuning in. Any news on Fidelity? Not a single word. We have emailed Fidelity multiple times. They've not even acknowledged your email or responded. And I mean, this is like the regional boss. They don't care. What you need to do is email dlp@gov.ky and inform the government that you still 65, 67, 70 days later, you have still not received your money. Darlene, I agree. Why take the risk? It is not worth it. Not worth it. And for people who think that it is, I don't think that they have a good understanding of what this virus does. So someone on Instagram says that kids are not as susceptible to the disease, right? Well, here's what we know. Again, keep this into consideration, right? By and large, kids seem to be asymptomatic. So it's not that they're not catching it, but they are not as severely impacted a lot of times by the disease. So what that means is if kids are asymptomatic and they catch it, and they are actually more likely to catch it because they are children and they don't always understand social distancing and they don't always get, wash your hands well and frequently. And so they're touching everything and they're sharing things, et cetera, et cetera. They're more likely to be carriers of it. And I think that is why children, it's not so much that the children are all going to start dying on us and getting really, really sick. It's more that they are super carriers of the virus. So they will have it, show no symptoms at all, or maybe they'll get this Kawasaki or COVID toes disease. But most of them are not necessarily going to get sick, although some children have died from it. We've had babies dying from this now. So there's no guarantees at all. And it might just be your child that becomes that one case that's going to get really sick and die from it. But I think the larger concern with children is the fact that they will spread it a lot quicker. And they will spread it to other children and to other members of their household, including granny, who then becomes the 75 or 60% of the people who will be severely impacted by the virus. And I think that is really where the major concern lives with the COVID-19 disease in children, is not so much that they're going to become extremely ill. It's more of a question of them getting it, being asymptomatic. No one even tests them. No one knows that they have it. And then they spread it on to other people. So Nigel says, thanks for your response, Sandy. Even though I'm no longer residing in the Cayman Islands, I still keep tuned in to CMR. Thank you so much for that, Nigel. I'm glad to see that you are keeping up with things all over the world because, like I said, we do not live in isolation. We rely on air travel in and outside the Cayman Islands. Right now, everybody's online ordering stuff because we have no choice. And so the first time in our history, we've actually set a new record for the number of imports that are coming into the Cayman Islands. Rosanna says, what if Alden decides to reopen despite what people are saying? I think if the vast majority of people are not in favor of reopening, Alden would be smart enough to know that that's not a wise thing. And I think, to be honest, Alden has been very, very cautious. He does not strike me as someone who often takes risk. And in fact, he had said prior to recent times that reopening on September the 1st was very unlikely. This was May the 19th. I'm going to share this. I think some of you missed his comments at this particular press conference. But back in May, he said at the time, although they had sort of set a date of reopening of September the 1st, he actually shared that the possibility of us reopening our borders for September the 1st is looking very bleak given the current state of the virus in the United States. This was May the 19th. This was before what is happening now, which is this humongous spike in the virus. So if Alden was saying that on May the 19th, I don't see him reopening, folks. I don't see that happening. I think he's just politicians, trying to placate a few people and say, you know what? Some of you want to reopen. Let's put together a committee for them to do the research and come up with, if we were to reopen, how can we reopen safely? They need to look at countries like Barbados. They need to look at countries like Jamaica who have reopened, and then they're having to backtrack and figure out, oops, we're importing 99% now of our infections. and it's taken a toll on our system. So now we need to have a plan of, okay, we're going to quarantine these people, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And so, for the love of all the money in the world, does it really make any sense? So someone says on Instagram, what about our human rights and other aspects of our well-being and the economy? Well, what about it is my question. If you are dead, and if people in your community are so sick, you have no hospital beds, you have no ventilators, people are dying, people are sick, what about the human rights of those people who don't want to catch it? You know what I'm saying? Who don't want to put anyone at risk? So human rights is a very interesting concept because everybody thinks about themselves first and what their human rights are. But what about the human rights of everybody else to be able to live in an environment that is safe? You know, your human rights stop when it starts to interfere with my human rights. And my human rights stop when it starts to interfere with somebody else's human rights. So we have to think of this in a very community construct. So it's not just about individuals. And yes, there are people who will be impacted by this on an economic level, but I invite you to go and read the articles with Sweden. See what Sweden did. They decided they were going to ignore the coronavirus. They were going to go with the method of, or the belief that you can get herd immunity. Let's keep our economy strong. Let's remain open. And unfortunately for them, that has not worked. The information is there. Go and look it up. Herd immunity has not worked for them. Or leaving their borders open isn't working for them. So now they admit they're far from reaching herd immunity. That's because it doesn't exist yet. So their PM is trying to defend their decision to not close. Fortune magazine has a very interesting article that you can read. So again, the question is, there have always been viruses, right? But there's not been a COVID SARS-2 virus. And there is a difference. When you have a new novel coronavirus, I think you missed our comments earlier when we were saying that the big difference here, this isn't just a virus. This is a new virus that no one in the world has any immunity to. And that's why it's spreading in the manner in which it's spreading. This is also a new virus that we don't know a lot about. So one of the things that they are now discovering in terms of this virus is it is devastating the human bodies of the people who have it. So when they're conducting autopsies of people who died from COVID-19, they're seeing that the body, unlike any other virus they have ever seen, is riddled with blood clots, which is unusual. So there is a lot of stuff that they simply do not know and understand about this virus. So this isn't a situation where, we've always had viruses, just go with it, don't worry about it. We need to be responsible and educate ourselves specifically on this virus and why this particular virus is deadly right now for us as the human population. So I'm going to invite you. I see you have a lot of questions. Listen, there are medical journals out there that you need to be reading, because if you do not understand the fundamentals of how this virus works and what is going on, you need to read up on this. We have tried to educate people, and there's tons of information that is available in the public realm for you to really have a good understanding of this virus. Do not operate on the basis that this is just a run-of-the-mill virus and you can catch it, you'll be fine, you'll survive, what's the big deal? This is a humongous deal. When you have almost now over 75,000 people, they're going to reach the 100,000 mark, no doubt about that, in the US. When you have the US population, which only accounts for 4% of the world's population, having 25% of the infection rates for this virus, knowing that that's not even anywhere near the number of people who actually have it, because they're only testing the sickest of the sickest. knowing that you have over 1,000 people a day that are dying in the US, I want you to explain to me, what economy are you trying to save? What's the economic benefit? Shout out to, I'm not quite sure what the name is, but WCE.Vani. Sorry, I don't know what your proper name is. Maybe it's Vani. So again, Sweden has taken this very controversial approach of remaining open, and their prime minister continues to try to defend this despite the fact that the numbers don't support it. So Sweden has reported far greater numbers of COVID-19 than anywhere else in the Nordic region. So data published by an agency there in June says that about 10% of people in Stockholm, which is Sweden's worst affected area, have developed antibodies. In the past 4 weeks, they claim that it's now up to 17% of the population. But again, no one knows how long these antibodies will last for. The thinking at the moment is it's probably just a few months. So they're moving into uncharted territory. So this is what they said. Of course, it's unfortunate. It indicates that the protection from antibodies doesn't last very long. Okay. So the concept of herd immunity is a controversial one, and Swedish public health experts have consistently denied that achieving it was ever a stated goal, despite the fact that they have refused to close down, basically. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. Folks, we're out of time. But why are they so many US citizens who don't agree with me? I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Folks, thank you guys so much for tuning into the program today. It is Friday. So again, we have the privilege of being able to go out a little bit and to enjoy some of the freedoms that we have now acquired. Please don't let us go back into lockdown. Paul, good morning. I hear thunder. Sounds like we're in for some rain today. I've got a 10 o'clock meeting, so I'm going to get ready and rush to my meeting. Morna says, be careful about packages. Yes, spray your packages down. When you get packages delivered, don't keep the boxes and stuff like that in your house. In fact, unpack them on the porch, throw the boxes outside, spray everything down, take off your clothes, wash yourself down. There's not been any indication that packages are actually transmitting the virus, but out of an abundance of caution, I would say those are the types of things that you can certainly do. So George says, we need the revenue into the government coffers, so it's hard to not even see one cruise ship in port. Cruise ship? Lord Jehovah, no. They're definitely not coming until next year. Even if we reopen to airport travel, cruise ships are the worst possible place to be. They have spread this virus to thousands of people around the world. Listen, if we get to the point where we can go like how we've been, I think we reached some 10 days of having 0 cases, we'll be able to reopen a large part of our internal economy. And people can come in once they are prepared to go into isolation and be tested and be subjected to that protest. I don't have an issue with that. If you want to come in and stay at the Ritz and pay the Ritz-Carlton or the Hyatt or whoever, pay their fees for mandatory quarantining situation, by all means, come on in. What you find people want to do is they just want free travel. So they want to come in, and then jump back out in a week or two. And that's the worst case scenario for spreading this virus. That's not going to work. So unfortunately, I don't think that that's a good idea. And that's exactly what you're going to see happening. So Diana says she's from the BVI. We're open internally in the BVI after almost a month of lockdown. We're open for only repatriation flights, and that's the same thing here in the Cayman Islands. Repatriation flights, in and out. If you're coming in, mandatory quarantining. Folks, please be safe. Stay tuned for the 3 o'clock press conference. And she says there in BVI, they only have 8 positive cases. And now they have declared themselves as COVID-19 free. And the only way to remain COVID-19 free, folks, is to keep those borders shut. As simple as that. Big shout out to Miracle Brokers. Aeropost, their sister company, can help you get your packages here in a consolidated fashion, very, very safely. So check out their services. And we will be here, God's willing, on Monday morning. We'll stream the press conference live, hopefully if all goes well. I don't anticipate any major announcements, but we'll see as we move to like the 3rd phase now of the level 2. And I guess we might be planning on level 1, but with closed borders. But we'll find out more at the press conference, 3 p.m. today. So make sure you guys tune in and be safe.
Miracle Brokers is back. That's right. We're fully reopened and back to work. Our agents are here to serve you with all of your packing and shipping needs. Need to move? Don't worry. Give us a call today. Collect a package, shipping around the world, or straight to Cayman? You got it. Give us a call on 949-5989. Collection by personalized appointment only, where our dedicated agents are on standby to personally assist you. Don't forget to wear your mask, maintain social distancing, and 1 person per appointment. Check us out at miraclebrokers.com today. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.